A Build Hatch developed production.
Hello, I'm Aaron Kyle and welcome to another episode of Build Hatch. On this week's episode of Build Hatch, I got to sit down with our first Gold Coast builder on the show, Sam Barlow from Barlow Building. I really enjoyed spending some time speaking with Sam right here on the Gold Coast about the building construction industry, which is going gangbusters right now. As you'll hear, there is some really big demand for high-end architectural builders on the Gold Coast and surrounding Surface Paradise. And Sam and his team are leading the charge by filling the gap of offering custom-built, high-end, quality projects. I really enjoyed our chat, not only talking about the building construction industry on the Gold Coast, but also discussing the wonderful lifestyle, including achieving what we are all after in building life. That is the work-life balance. Like I said, I really enjoyed having Sam on our show, being the first Queensland guest on Build Hatch. So let's get into it. Okay, Sam from Barlow Building on the Gold Coast. Welcome to Build Hatch.
Thank you for having me.
You're our first Gold Coast guest, which is exciting. There's plenty going on in the construction space. So Sam, how's things going here on the Gold Coast?
Yeah, the last 2 years have been pretty full on, like I'm sure most builders around Australia, but I just can't really see it slowing down on the Gold Coast at the moment. It's such a good place to live. The infrastructure and venues we have up here now, it's such an attraction for people. You got the lifestyle, obviously, of living on the Gold Coast, but then you've also got, the jobs to go with it now. I think sort of 5-10 years ago, Gold Coast has always been such an awesome place to be, an awesome place to live, but we sort of didn't have the jobs or the infrastructure on the Gold Coast to make it sort of a sustainable place for a lot of people to live. It's probably one of the areas I've noticed over the last sort of 5 years that the Gold Coast has improved in a lot.
Have you always grown up here on the Goldie?
I was originally born in Tassie. I moved over to the Gold Coast. My parents moved up here when I was 2 and I've been here ever since. And I've always said to my partner, the only 2 places I'll live is either the Gold Coast or the sunny coast. However, I think Bali might be on the cards later on in my life.
Now, what was it like growing up here on the Gold Coast?
Oh, it's such a magical spot. The beaches here are absolutely unreal. So it's such a morning place. Like, I love going down to Melbourne and Sydney for little holidays and getaways with either my partner or some mates. But I always notice, everyone up on the Gold Coast is all early starters. We're always up so early. You got coffee shops open early. It's nice to be able to go for a swim before you, sort of go to the gym, go for a swim before you get stuck into work. Just clear the brain for the day.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And before we hear about Barlow Building, I always like to take our guests back to how they aspired to get in the construction industry. So getting into building from a young age, was that always on the cards, was it?
It definitely was. I originally was a landscaper. So I did landscape construction from when I was sort of 14 and a half, 15 till I was about 19 or 20.
So did you leave school then, like at a young age?
Yeah, I dropped out at the end of grade 10 to start my landscape construction apprenticeship. It sort of led me, although I did landscape construction for the first 4 years, very similar sort of work to what you do when you're doing carpentry anyway. So like we're doing retaining walls, fences, decking sort of stuff. So, I mean, like I said, a lot of people, your first 2 years of building anyway or doing any sort of trade is really just getting those hand skills and having a general understanding of, how to use basic tools and just wrapping your head around, I suppose, how the construction industry sort of operates.
So you were always sort of that outdoor sort of person?
Oh, definitely. Even when I was doing landscaping, as much as I loved it, I used to have a mate who his brother was a builder, and I used to go around to his house on Friday or Saturday when I was younger to have a beer, and we would I used to say to him, "Hey mate, I love the houses that you build. I want to come and work with you one day." And he used to sort of say, "Yeah, eventually," and it was actually funny. He called me one day and he goes, "Hey, how long do you finish your landscape apprenticeship?" And I said, "This was on a Tuesday," and I said, "I finished my last days on Thursday." He goes, "Do you want to do some work on Saturday?" And I said, yeah. And I called up my boss and I said, my landscape boss, I said, "Hey, I've got a new job. I'm going to go do my carpentry apprenticeship." Because at this stage, I sort of knew that I wanted to be a builder. I sort of always enjoyed looking at houses, enjoyed architecture, design. And anyway, he goes, "Yeah, no dramas, that's fine." And I rocked up on the Saturday and I said, "Hey, I've quit my job." And he goes, "Oh, I only have weekend work for you." And I said, "Oh, that's all right. Well, I don't have a job anymore, so any work that you have, just give it to me because, I want to do this. I want to work for you. he was doing high-end residential builds, and that's sort of exactly what I wanted to do.
Tell me about the transition, I guess, from say landscape construction over to residential construction.
When I work with some of my apprentices now, they always, I get comments on, the quality of your work, which you have to have when you're doing high-end residential builds. It's just something that as a chippy, you have to be relentless with how high-end the work is. You're working on multi-million-dollar homes. And like I say to my boys when they stuff things up, I don't think there was anyone that was as shit of a carpenter as I was when I started. I said, but if you boys put in the time and the effort, you guys will end up good. So I just had this mentality from when I started. I remember one of my first days, and I was having the builder say, cut me a noggin at 403, and I'd pass it to him, and he'd go, "This is a millimeter out. This is 2 millimeters out." And in my brain, landscaping, I was like, "Mate, that's perfect." Like, I just didn't understand it. Afterwards, about 2 years down the track, he goes, "I was so close to getting rid of you a couple of times because the quality of your work just wasn't up there." But he goes, "You put so much time and effort into being good," and he's like, "I'm so happy that I kept you." He goes, "Any time that I thought of possibly just letting you know that it wasn't good enough," he goes, "You would work twice as hard as anyone else just to make sure that something would look good." And I was just like, sort of the mentality I've had with everything, like, even with dropping out of school early and stuff, it was really hard at the start to to be able to communicate with clients through emails and stuff, which for some people it's so simple, but for me it really wasn't. It was something that I just had the same mentality. I thought, if it takes me 2 hours to write an email, you know what, that's what happens for not listening in school. This is your punishment. You're going to have to learn eventually. Someone else may be able to write the email in 10 minutes, 20 minutes. You may take an hour or 2 hours, but hey, as long as this isn't going to be forever, you're going to get better at stuff. And I sort of just always had that mentality with anything that I've done.
I obviously see a lot of disputes in construction, and quite often you can tell where the problems have arisen, and a lot of them is that emotional intelligence or that emotional intellect that we as humans don't often get taught. There's no textbook, there's no hard or fast rule. You don't get taught these things. It's relationships, and
Yeah,
no relationship is the same and no personality is the same. So when you're putting it all together, it can go different ways, and often it comes down to, well, you know what, maybe that person wasn't taught or they don't understand. It's not a personal thing. They're just not aware of it.
no, definitely.
So if you have that continually improving and listening, those simple skills can go a long way, can't they?
I don't think there's anything that can beat honesty, and nothing can beat someone that works hard. You can be as talented as you want. If you don't have the work ethic, you're not going to get, nowhere near as far. There's my personal opinion is, nothing can beat hard work. And also, I think clients see that as well. Like, you also have to be open with your communication with them. Nothing beats honesty. Two things that my old man's always taught me is communication, 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 and just to be honest with people. Like, it's we're in the building industry, things go wrong. It's, as much as we try to hide it, we don't show all the stuff that can go wrong on our, on our social media and stuff. We all know that, everyone has the same sort of issues. If you're honest with your clients, you can't go wrong. Like, sometimes you have to, hey, something's gone wrong, or a trade's let me down or whatever. And as the builder, you're the forefront of that. But if you're honest, at least you're not dragging them out. You've informed them as soon as you know. And sometimes, straight away they're going to be a bit upset, but long term, they're going to appreciate the honesty. And it just, otherwise, if you don't have honesty, especially in building, it just goes downhill so quickly.
Yeah, definitely. Your business is called Barlow Building. When did you make the transition into starting your own company?
So my wife Chelsea, who works with us full time, who I've just married, I originally was going to be called Complete Construction. I was working for a company on the Gold Coast who I did my whole apprenticeship for, and I was starting to, I don't want to say run his jobs, because I definitely, there's a lot more. At the time, I probably thought I was, because I didn't understand the back end of the business as much. I was at home, and my partner studied business at Bond and has done quite well in business, and she sort of said, what are you doing? You're working for another builder. You're pretty much doing a lot of the stuff, yourself. Where I don't think she actually realized either, how much stuff I probably still did have to learn. But I just had the mentality that I'd felt like I'd learned as much as I could in the industry, and the only way I was gonna learn more was throwing myself in the deep end and doing stuff. I've always had that mentality of I don't care if it's going to take me twice as long as someone else at the start. I'm still going to give you the best product. I won't leave until it's the best. At the start, things would take me a little bit longer. It took me a little bit longer to understand or sort of get procedures and stuff where, maybe if I'd stayed with someone else for another 2 years, I probably would have had. But I think that it's a fast way of growing. Just throw yourself in the deep end and you're either going to sink or you're going to swim. And
That's right.
there's no way I was going to bloody sink.
So you went out on your own. So did you have a project lined up? Did you have some clients? How did that work?
I had the builder I was contracting to just say to me, I've got 2 weeks being a little bit quiet. And he actually had said to me, he said, the only way you're going to get better is by taking on some weekend work. And I just started taking on some weekend work. And then he actually got a little bit of upset because I wouldn't touch my phone at work. The phone's in the esky. It doesn't matter. Everyone would know Sam will not answer his phone at work. And because I was starting to get some weekend work, I started just answering my phone. And I could tell he was getting a little bit upset. And I was like, mate, it's work. Weekend work, like you told me to do, like he sort of passed that way. But then it just got a little bit hard that it was, he was getting a bit upset. I was going to weekend work I had Barlow Building on my car, and then I had a making construction trailer on as well. And it was just it was getting a bit messy. So
good advertising.
Yeah, I'm still mates with Nick to this day. So I honestly couldn't thank him enough for what he's taught me.
How did you sort of grow? At what point do I need to grow and put on an apprentice, or did you put on a supervisor or qualified? How did that work?
Pretty much just brought on, it was a labourer, but pretty much an apprentice straight away. It's really just, I suppose, like anyone knows, the growing stage is so hard because you don't want to overcommit to someone and be having to pay their wage. But then, I'm such a soft person with people, and I think it shows in the culture of my company. But I couldn't just go out and hire someone for a week and then, just lay them off or whatever. It's sort of, I always felt that responsibility. Hey, I got to provide for them as well. And so I've just always, I think I've waited till I needed maybe 1.5 people, and then I put sort of one on. And it's just, I think in business, there's always like that scale of going up where it's sort of, you go up and then you sort of come a little bit down and you go up again. And you just need in those stages where you're coming down, you may be doing, 12 to 16, 15 hours a day, you're coming home, and it's just what you got to do. I still to this day, like yesterday, I do my bookwork in the morning, I spend 8 hours on the tools, and then I come home and I do another 5 hours. It's just, you just got to do what you can do. And, until you really are, I feel, my personal opinion, it probably is, until you really are struggling, say at least 2 months worth of work, then sort of start to put someone on, because you don't want to, stuff around with other people's lives as well. Like I've always felt it's a big responsibility taking people on. They're committed. They need money for their family, for their families as well.
Yeah, it certainly is. Just occasionally I'm hearing like sound. Is it accidental tap on the mic or something? Just a little.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's all right. All right. So tell us about Barlow Building now. Like, how many is in your team? You're doing some amazing projects here on the Gold Coast.
Yeah. So there's 11 of us now. 11 of us in the team. Chelsea in the office. I've got 2 sort of, I call them site leaders, a few apprentices and chippies and stuff underneath. The culture here is honestly second to none. We're all really close. One of my head carpenters I actually worked under, so he was the carpenter at the company I did my apprenticeship with. So we've been together for 11 years. We got a warehouse getting built at the moment, so we can open up a office and stuff at the end of the year, which is also good because it's getting a bit old having the office at home. Feel like you can never escape, but
no, that's exciting. Now, you mentioned culture. Like, what are some of the things that you think have kind of developed your culture within Barlow Building?
I say it to people all the time, and it almost gets me when I talk to my boys about it. It almost gets me a little bit emotional. I just genuinely care about the people that work with me, and when I see that they put in that effort towards me, I feel like I need to put in effort back towards them. Like I just had my wedding and I had four of my workers there. Like it's not a forced relationship. It's that I genuinely, and I say that to the boys as well, I say I genuinely do care. And I have some boys that work, like one of my guys, he works 4 days because I could notice he wasn't happy. And then I sort of started thinking to myself, he's 50 years old, he's got kids, he wants to be at home with his kids. And I try to sort of work around the boys as much as I can. I think that it's changing a lot just in general, the work environment. Like, you need to give people that little bit of flexibility. People don't want you to be screaming down their neck. It's one of the main things. If I say when I employ people, I say there's two main things when you come and work with us. It's your energy. So if you're someone that's going to drain our energy, we don't want you. And the second is the way that you treat our apprentices. So I say to them, I've had apprentices make thousands of dollars of mistakes at the end of jobs that push out handover dates and stuff. And I say to them, have you ever seen me raise my voice at my apprentices? No, I haven't. So why do you think you guys can talk like that? It's just sort of the two big things. When I first started, I used to have, as you do, you set out your goals, and I would say, have a really good carpenter, have two really good carpenters. And then I realized how hard it was to get. So I was just sitting down one day and I thought, you need to change your goal, create these good carpenters. So get them young, or, get them at the second year and start creating carpenters. And now that I'm sort of, 5-6 years in, I'm starting to see that, where I've had people from first year that are now running projects, running jobs for us, the smaller jobs. And then I'm starting to see guys I've had from first year, that are now teaching our other apprentices. And it's rewarding, and they've also been taught the correct way and the way you want. They know the culture of the company. So anyone else that comes in, if they're not a good suit, you can, these people have been with you for 4 or 5 years. You can trust their opinion of them, like, hey, their energy's not right or whatever. And, you sort of have to just move them on.
Do you get together with your team often, like sort of do some team building exercises and stuff like that?
We, most Fridays, will do something together, whether it's having a beer or sit down. So I used to talk a lot in the meetings and, almost just bombard them with information. When nowadays I kind of just take a step back and let them do all the talking and soak it in, and, ask them there's sort of 3 questions I normally ask. What have we done the last month that you've really, really enjoyed and you want to keep doing? What's something that we haven't done that you want to start? And what's something that we're doing at the moment that sort of needs improvement? So I just sort of try to put it onto them as much as we can and say, is there any systems that you guys want to implement, and try to just listen to them as much as I can, especially as we get a bigger team as well. I think it's important to still give everyone a voice.
Yeah, definitely. How's it all going here on the Gold Coast with trades and getting quality trades and stuff like that? Like, is it challenging here as what it is everywhere else?
All builders rely on just that relationship they've had with trades. Obviously, this year has been a little bit harder, where builders used to have almost the upper hand, and trades wanted to work for builders, so they'd bend over backwards. When now you really have to be careful as a builder and sort of how you approach stuff, and you can't put too much pressure on. But this is how I operate anyway. I don't want to be putting too much pressure on trades, because I sort of understand the stress of, they've probably got another 5 builders that probably aren't as relaxed as what I am, breathing down their neck. So I'm just trying to, long gone are the days where you'd call them and say, hey, I got a job in 2-3 weeks, come and do it. We're sending people, we book in a job and we're like, hey, 6 months, we're aiming for this date in October. And then, every 2 or 3 weeks, we're sending them updates of sort of where the schedule's at the moment. It's just a shortage of labour, and I really can't see it getting any better.
The people that experience the worst conditions are more the people that are, I guess, isolated areas. Like, I'm not suggesting you have it easier because you're on the Gold Coast, but you do have access to a large pool of resource people that want to live there and work there.
Yeah.
And because they're getting that work-life balance, then, like you said, it's about having those relationships with those people and planning well ahead.
Yeah, definitely. Even, like, I remember, obviously, when the timber was really, all the timber shortages were really bad. I remember it was taken up to like 6 months to get floor systems. As much as it was a bad thing, I used to, you try to look at the good in sort of anything. Otherwise, you get so caught up and things can eat you up. In my head, I just thought, this is going to weasel out all these people that aren't as organised as others. It's, you can't just go, get to your floor system and then say to your client, hey, we just tried to order the floor system and, it's a 6-month wait. Like, you got to be organised. So, I mean, it's probably a good thing for the industry in a way, because it's making all builders be a lot more organised. And, as things go back, if they do back to normal, everyone's just going to be so used to scheduling so far in advance that I think it's going to almost push jobs through faster, as long as we can obviously get the labour to do them.
100%. All right, Sam. So you're well known with your recently completed Burleigh Apartment Project. So tell us about that.
What a job.
Pretty complicated.
Yeah. So I had my clients come to me after seeing at an investment property apartment that I'd renovated, and they'd just bought 2 penthouses above the property and asked me to come have a walk through. And yeah, no dramas. So I took them for a walk through, and they then showed me these 3D visualizations from a designer in Spain, and asked if it was a project I wanted to do. And although we've done a lot of, we do quite high end work, this was to another level. Like, regardless of when I was an apprentice, when I did high end residential builds as well, it was the highest scope work that I've ever done, and it was sort of like, I feel like it's almost going to break us through into that realm. It's exciting project. I've got a lot of content that's all planned that I haven't released yet, so I'm excited to show everyone.
So, all right, well, give us a bit of insight into it. So, why was it challenging? Because of the access and the brief.
Yeah, it was just what was shown. One of the most frustrating parts, but also the most challenging part, but also the most exciting part was what was shown on the renders. As all builders know, sometimes it can be a little bit hard to make. Where the designer and my client, it was pretty much, no, what's there is getting built. And the amount of structural work that went into a body corporate building, which anyone knows, trying to do structural changes in body corporate buildings is an absolute nightmare to
Nightmare.
get approval for everyone. It was just a lot of, to make everything work. There's a lot of hidden doors, secret doors, structural changes to the common area, which was a pain in the butt in itself to get approval for. But one of my favorite parts about the building, we were doing such different stuff that you never see here on the Gold Coast. On the Gold Coast, you do a lot of coastal Hampton style homes, which is awesome. And as coming from a carpentry background, it's really, really enjoyable to build. But it almost felt like a little bit of Melbourne architecture up to you're right on the beach on Burleigh Beach in this penthouse, where normally you are doing those coastal style builds, and we're doing some of the most wacky, wild tiles you've ever seen, where we got 4 different bathrooms, 4 different tiles with crazy patterns from this Spanish designer. It was really enjoyable to do. Obviously had its challenges like all jobs, just being able to get material up and getting massive beams up with power lines all around the building. But it was just a really, really rewarding job to do once we finished.
So, did you have to sort of set up your own access for that job?
One of the trickiest parts of that job is around the 2 front sides, so along Burleigh Esplanade and First Avenue in Burleigh Heads. It had power lines wrapping around it, so we couldn't lift at all from the front with our steel beams or anything, which was ended up being quite a nightmare. And we could have scaffold for a certain amount of time, but because the build was so high end, it was nowhere near long enough. So we had a lot of just labour, the boys walking up and down, and then having to ask, apartment blocks next door if we can lift from over in their car parks and blocking all that sort of stuff up. It was just, for some, I suppose, bigger building companies, it might be quite normal, but it was just one of those learning curves for me where, hey, I knew that this is what I want to do. And it was sort of just that first stepping stone of, all right, you've been given this opportunity to grab it with both hands and sort of show people what Barlow Building can do.
That's where logistics comes into it. It's one thing to build a project, but to actually look at the logistics side of things, it's another level.
You're exactly right. We it's so much time spent in thinking and planning with a lot of people. I think that's one of the main differences when you're doing such high end builds. I'd even had a couple comments of my trade say, hey, your site supervisor's just been like staring at this wall for an hour and drawing something down. He doesn't look like he's been doing much.
Doesn't look like he's doing anything.
And I'm like, you have no idea how much planning goes in from the start to get, when you walk into this apartment specifically, and you walk upstairs to the upper level, and you go, oh, that's awesome, it's an outdoor entertainment area, and you actually don't know there's hidden sliding bookcases, hidden doors that you push open with, bathrooms, 2 different rooms, and every time I go in there, people are just like, I didn't even know those rooms were there. I said, I know I said that, and the thought went from, as soon as we demolished the place, the thought had to go into, hey, how are we going to line all this up so that when we put all the feature buttons and everything on, everything lines up and you can't see that there's doors there. It's pretty cool when you walk inside.
Tell us about the secret bookcases. How did they work?
So in one of the drawings I'd sort of picked up, I said, hey, to my client, it's shown a bookcase in one of the drawings on this wall, but in behind that bookcase is actually a kitchen, so we can't have a bookcase there. He's like, no, I want the bookcase there. I said, it's not going to work. Like, there's a kitchen behind it. You need to be able to get into the kitchen. And then he's like, I want it to work. And then I just sat there. And sometimes we would be stuck on ideas. I'm not joking, for a week. And I would have 3 or 4 of my guys and we'd brainstorm and we'd go home, brainstorm, go home. And then I just thought to myself one day, why don't we make this big wall that's 5 meters wide slide from left to right? And as it sort of slides one way, it has buttons that interlock, so you can't tell that it's open. And when it's closed completely, it just looks like a bookcase. So either way you slide it, you can't tell it's a wall. And I sort of called the designer. I said, what do you think of this idea? And he's like, you're crazy. And I said, I think I can make it work. Along with one of my site leaders that I've sort of worked with since 19. So for the last 8 years, we sort of brainstormed it together, and then he's sort of the chippy genius that did it.
Great.
With all custom fabricated steel, and the whole thing just rolls from left to right. It's pretty cool.
Now, how did you price this job? I presume you can't price it as a fixed price contract from the start.
No, we do quite a lot of cost plus projects, and this was cost plus. Even when we do cost plus projects, the biggest thing with cost plus is, constant updates. So every week of where you are, but still having something to gauge off. So we still go to our estimator and get a full builder's quote and estimate it as best we can. And then we can still at least track it along the build. So it's like, hey, we originally allowed $200,000 in cabinetry or whatever. We're starting to notice we're probably going to go over, and you still sort of track. But a job like that couldn't go into a fixed price. It's just...
Yeah, look, there's a saying in construction law about cost plus is trust. Like you said, you have to be able to manage the client and hold their hand through it and constantly cross-check and check in. That's the only way you can successfully manage them.
That's where just, again, like honesty and communication comes into it. You have to be extremely honest. The communication has to be clear. You hear stories all the time of, builders, they charged me, they didn't pass their discounts on, or they, whatever it is, they charge me a different rate to what's invoiced for. If something went wrong, imagine not being able to just know what's correct, what you've lied about and what you haven't. Just be honest with everything. Cost plus is a safe contract for you to have. Every time I get a cost plus contract, it's just like, all right, I've been given a safe contract. You're getting paid, whatever your payment terms state. Do the right thing by the owners. Normally, the first month or two, they ask you for copies of invoices and stuff. Send them over straight away. And I always encourage them to ask me. I said, ask me at the start, and then you'll get over asking me, because everything you ask me for is going to be above board. Like, it's just that bloody easy. And then I said, then every now and then, if you just want to be like, hey, I don't care whether it's a $200 receipt or a $200,000 invoice, just ask me whatever ones you want, because they're going to be exactly as they are every time.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, look, that's important. Now, shout out to the designer. We better give the designer a plug as well.
Gary from Chart International, half based in Spain and half based in Melbourne. He normally does all the design stuff for the Australian Open. Does some really funky stuff.
Now, Sam, when you're not busy running Barlow Building, what do you like to do outside of work?
Love to play a little bit of golf with my mates. I like my motorbikes and jet skis and stuff like that. So. But I mean, the older I get, the less I'm doing that, the more I'm sort of starting to... Chelsea and I have got a few projects we're doing this year, a couple of our own developments. So a lot of our spare time just goes into that. But honestly, at the moment, it's really what we enjoy doing on our time off. So we just got back from Bali. The whole week we were there, we were just pretty much looking for villas to buy. As cliche as it is, when people say, if you do what you love, you won't work a day in your life. Don't get me wrong. There's days where it's chaos and, you're up on your computer till midnight and, things are stressful. But my partner and I both have a love for building that it makes it really easy to know what we want to do.
Doing something that you love is very important, and successful businesses come from that, doing what you love doing, and therefore the effort to do something special with your business, it just comes naturally.
No, that's it. Definitely does.
Now, if people are listening to this and they want to get into contact with you, Sam, and your team from Barlow Building, what's the best way to go about it?
Best way is to either reach out to us on Instagram or on our website. We've just had our website redone, barlowbuilding.com.au, or just on our Instagram of Barlow Building. Just send us a DM and either one of the girls in the office will let me know and we'll give you a bell.
All right. Well, Sam from Barlow Building, thank you for coming on to Build Hatch. Yeah, I really appreciate you having you on the show, and it's always good to find out how different areas of Australia are going, and particularly here on the Gold Coast. Thanks for coming on to the show.
No dramas at all.
Well, that was another Build Hatch episode with Sam Barlow from Barlow Building on the Gold Coast in sunny Queensland. As we discussed, Sam and his team are working on some of the Gold Coast's amazing up-and-coming projects, and I certainly encourage you to check out their socials for an insight into their leading work. As usual, if you know a hard worker having a go in the construction space or a building-related business, person or product where you love what they are doing or selling, then please do get into contact with us and we'll be more than happy to tell their story and get behind their goods or services on the Build Hatch marketplace. Our team are busy rolling out independent sellers on buildhatch.com as we speak, so stay tuned for more and more products and services as they onboarded. As usual, please check out our Instagram page and other socials where you'll be able to learn more about our guests and some of the features of the work that we talk about. Have a great week and you'll hear me again on the airwaves next week. Thanks for listening to another episode of Build Hatch.
You have experienced a Build Hatch developed production.